The massive German shepherd burst through the rotting wooden door with such force that splinters flew everywhere like tiny daggers. Inside the dark, crumbling building, something caught the dog's attention. A smell, faint but unmistakable. The smell of death. Atlas, the $50,000 purebred dog belonging to billionaire Marcus Wellington, had never disobeyed his master before. But today something was different. Today, he had torn his leash right out of his handler's grip and sprinted 6 blocks through the wealthy neighborhood of Rosewood Heights, past the mansion gates, through the manicured gardens, and into the forgotten part of town where buildings stood like broken teeth against the gray sky. And now, in the darkest corner of this abandoned factory, Atlas stood frozen. His keen eyes had found something his owner would never have expected. A woman, barely breathing. Her lips were blue, her skin pale as moonlight, and her body curled up like a dying flower on the cold concrete floor. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. This wasn't just any woman. The diamond ring on her finger, though covered in dirt and grime, was worth more than most people's houses. And the monogram on her torn designer dress read, EW, the same initials that appeared on half the buildings in Rosewood Heights. Atlas threw back his head and howled, a sound so loud and desperate that it echoed through the empty streets like a siren. And what Atlas didn't know was that this woman's husband, the one who had put her here, was at that very moment sitting in a restaurant just 3 miles away, celebrating her disappearance. But how did a billionaire's wife end up dying in an abandoned building? And why would Atlas risk everything to find her? Comment below where you're watching from, and let's dive into this unbelievable story. To understand how everything fell apart, we need to go back 3 months earlier, to a time when Eleanor Wellington's life looked perfect from the outside. Eleanor stood in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling window of the Wellington mansion, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. 32 years old, she should have been living a fairy tale. She was married to Raymond Wellington, the heir to the Wellington technology empire, a company worth $7 billion. She lived in a mansion with 23 rooms, had a closet full of designer clothes, and drove a car that cost more than most people earned in 5 years. But Eleanor had learned something that rich people don't often talk about. Money can't buy happiness, and it definitely can't buy love. "You're up early again," a cold voice said behind her. Eleanor turned to see her husband Raymond walking into the living room, already dressed in his expensive suit, his phone pressed to his ear. He wasn't talking to her, he was talking to someone on the phone. He just happened to speak those words in her direction while barely looking at her. "I couldn't sleep," Eleanor said softly, wrapping her silk robe tighter around herself. Raymond made a dismissive gesture with his hand and walked past her, still talking on his phone about stock prices and business deals. This was normal now. This was their marriage. They lived in the same house but existed in completely different worlds. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. She had become an expert at hiding her sadness. After all, what right did she have to be unhappy? She had everything, didn't she? That's what everyone told her. That's what Raymond's mother, the cold and calculating Victoria Wellington, reminded her every single day. "Eleanor, dear, you should be grateful," Victoria had said to her just last week, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "My son gave you a life most women only dream about. The least you could do is smile more and complain less." But what Victoria didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Eleanor hadn't married Raymond for his money. She had married him for love, or at least what she thought was love. 5 years ago, Eleanor had been a kindergarten teacher in a small school in the suburbs. She had loved her job, loved working with children, loved the simple life she had built for herself. She lived in a tiny apartment with her best friend Sophie, and every Friday night they would make homemade pizza and watch romantic movies while laughing until their stomachs hurt. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, everything changed. Eleanor had been waiting at a bus stop, rain pouring down so hard she could barely see across the street. She had forgotten her umbrella at school, and her thin jacket was already soaked through. She was shivering, water dripping from her hair, when a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and the most handsome man Eleanor had ever seen looked out at her. "You're going to catch pneumonia out here," he had said, his smile warm and genuine. Please, let me give you a ride. Eleanor's mother had always warned her about getting into cars with strangers. But there was something about this man's eyes. They were kind, gentle, nothing like the cold eyes she would later come to know. I'm Raymond, he had said, reaching across to open the passenger door. And before you say no, I promise I'm not a serial killer. I'm just a guy who can't stand watching someone get drenched in the rain. Eleanor had laughed. A real, genuine laugh, and gotten into the car. That ride had turned into coffee. Coffee had turned into dinner. Dinner had turned into long walks in the park and late-night phone calls where they talked about everything and nothing. For 3 magical months, Eleanor had felt like she was living in a dream. Raymond had been different then. He had been attentive, caring, romantic. He had brought her flowers every Tuesday, yellow roses, her favorite. He had listened when she talked about her students, laughed at her silly jokes, and held her hand like she was the most precious thing in the world. I love you, Eleanor, he had whispered to her one night under a sky full of stars. You're not like anyone I've ever met. You're real. You're genuine. You make me want to be a better person. And Eleanor, sweet and trusting Eleanor, had believed every word. They had gotten married in a beautiful ceremony at the Wellington estate. It should have been the happiest day of Eleanor's life, but looking back now, she could see the warning signs she had been too blind to notice. Raymond's mother Victoria had looked at Eleanor with eyes like ice chips during the entire ceremony. His father Marcus had barely acknowledged her existence. And Raymond's business partner, the snake-like Gerald Foster, had made a toast that was filled with subtle insults disguised as jokes. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, 3 months after the wedding, Eleanor had discovered the truth. She had been using Raymond's laptop to look up a recipe when a message notification popped up on the screen. It was from someone named V, and it said, "Can't wait for next Tuesday. I miss you already." Eleanor's hands had started shaking. Her heart had felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. She shouldn't have looked. She knew she shouldn't have, but she couldn't stop herself. She opened the message thread. What she found made her physically sick. Messages going back to before they had even met. Messages filled with intimate details, plans to meet up, declarations of love. But the worst message, the one that had shattered her completely, was dated from 2 weeks before Raymond had proposed to Eleanor. V had written, "So you're really going through with this fake marriage? You're actually going to marry that poor school teacher." And Raymond had replied, "It's just for show. My father says I need to settle down, get married to someone normal, to improve the company's image. But don't worry, baby. You're the one I really love. This changes nothing between us." Eleanor had stood there in her beautiful mansion, wearing her expensive clothes, holding her breath as the truth crashed down on her like a building collapsing. Everything had been a lie. Raymond had never loved her. She had been a prop, a tool to make him look good to his father and the public. She had been used. That night, when Raymond came home, Eleanor had confronted him. She had shown him the messages, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking with every word. "How could you?" she had sobbed. "How could you do this to me?" Raymond's reaction was something Eleanor would never forget. He hadn't apologized. He hadn't looked guilty. He had looked annoyed. "Oh, for God's sake, Eleanor," he had said, loosening his tie like he was tired of a boring business meeting. "Don't be so dramatic. This is how things work in our world. Did you really think I married you for love? You're a kindergarten teacher from nowhere. You should be thanking me for giving you this life. But you said you loved me," Eleanor had whispered, her voice barely audible. "I said what I needed to say to get what I wanted," Raymond had replied coldly. "Now you have a choice. You can stay here, keep your mouth shut, and live like a queen. Or you can leave, go back to your pathetic little life, and have nothing. What's it going to be?" Eleanor should have left. She knew that now, but at the time she had been in shock. She had no family. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 20. Her best friend Sophie had moved to Australia for work. She had given up her apartment, her job, everything to marry Raymond. Where would she even go? So she had stayed. And every day since then had been a slow death of her spirit. Raymond had become colder and colder. He stopped pretending to care at all. He barely spoke to her except to criticize. He would disappear for days at a time, and Eleanor knew he was with V, whoever that was. And Victoria? Raymond's mother had become Eleanor's worst nightmare. Victoria seemed to take pleasure in making Eleanor feel small and worthless. "You're putting on weight, dear," Victoria would say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Raymond prefers his women slim. That dress makes you look cheap, Eleanor. Perhaps you should let me take you shopping, so I can teach you how to dress properly." No wonder Raymond is never home. What man wants to come home to a woman with such a sour face? Eleanor had tried everything to save her marriage. She had cooked Raymond's favorite meals, tried to look prettier, tried to be more interesting, tried to be less needy. But nothing worked. Raymond didn't want her. He had never wanted her. And now, 3 months ago, everything had reached a breaking point. It was a Friday evening when Eleanor finally decided she had had enough. She had been sitting in the massive dining room, alone as usual, staring at the expensive chandelier above her head and thinking about how she had become a ghost in her own life. That's when she had made the decision. She was going to leave. It didn't matter that she had nowhere to go. It didn't matter that she had no money of her own. Raymond controlled everything. She would figure it out. She would go to a shelter if she had to. Anything was better than this slow torture. Eleanor had gone upstairs to their bedroom and started packing a small bag. Just the essentials. Some clothes, her mother's old watch, the only thing she had left from her family, and her phone. She was zipping up the bag when she heard footsteps behind her. Going somewhere? Eleanor spun around to find Raymond standing in the doorway, but he wasn't alone. With him was the most beautiful woman Eleanor had ever seen. Tall, elegant, with long red hair and piercing green eyes. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than a car, and she was holding Raymond's hand. "This is Veronica," Raymond said casually, like he was introducing Eleanor to a business colleague. "I figured it was time you two finally met. Veronica, V, the woman Raymond actually loved." Eleanor felt like she had been slapped. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice shaking with rage and humiliation. "How dare you bring her here to our home?" Raymond laughed. Actually laughed. "Our home? Eleanor, this is my family's home. You're just living here. And honestly, I'm tired of pretending. Veronica and I are getting married. I'm divorcing you." "Finally," Veronica purred, looking at Eleanor with undisguised contempt. "I'm so tired of hiding." Something inside Eleanor snapped. 5 years of pain, humiliation, and sadness erupted all at once. "You can't do this," Eleanor shouted, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "I won't let you just throw me away like garbage. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll tell them how you used me, how you lied to everyone." Raymond's expression changed instantly. The casual amusement disappeared, replaced by something cold and dangerous. "You'll do no such thing," he said, his voice low and threatening. "If you try to cause problems for me, you'll regret it." "Are you threatening me?" Eleanor asked, taking a step back. "I'm promising you," Raymond said, moving closer. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, Eleanor. My family owns this town. We control the newspapers, the police, the courts. If you try to go against us, you'll disappear, and nobody will even ask questions." "You're insane?" Eleanor whispered, truly afraid now. "No," Veronica chimed in, examining her perfect manicured nails. "He's powerful. There's a difference. Now be a good girl and sign the divorce papers quietly. Raymond's lawyers have drawn up an agreement. You'll get $50,000 and that's it. Take it or leave it." $50,000? Eleanor felt dizzy. "We've been married for 5 years. Everything you have, everything your family has. I'm entitled to half." Raymond burst out laughing. "Entitled? You? Oh, Eleanor, that's adorable. You signed a prenup, remember? You get nothing. The $50,000 is me being generous." Eleanor did remember signing a prenup, but it had been the day before the wedding, and Raymond had told her it was just a formality, that it didn't mean anything because they would be together forever. She had been too in love and too trusting to read it carefully. She had been such a fool. "I won't sign anything," Eleanor said, grabbing her bag. "I'm leaving and I'm going to a lawyer. A real lawyer. Someone who isn't in your pocket." She tried to push past Raymond, but he grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in painfully. "You're not going anywhere," he hissed. "Let go of me." Eleanor struggled, and in the chaos, her bag fell to the floor, her belongings scattering everywhere. That's when Veronica's eyes landed on something. Eleanor's mother's watch. A simple silver watch with an inscription on the back. "To my beloved daughter, with all my love." Veronica picked it up, examining it with a sneer. How sentimental. How pathetic. "Give that back." Eleanor lunged for it, but Veronica held it out of reach. "Make me," Veronica taunted. What happened next occurred so fast that Eleanor barely processed it. She reached for the watch, Veronica pulled back, and Eleanor's hand accidentally knocked against Veronica's face. Veronica screamed like she had been attacked by a wild animal. "She hit me," Veronica shrieked, holding her cheek even though Eleanor had barely touched her. "Raymond, she attacked me." "No, I didn't. I was just trying to get my mother's watch back." But Raymond wasn't listening. His face had turned red with rage. "You dare lay a hand on Veronica?" "Raymond, please, I didn't." The slap came out of nowhere. Raymond's hand connected with Eleanor's face so hard that she fell backward, hitting the floor with a painful thud. The room spun around her. She tasted blood in her mouth. "That's what you get," Veronica said, standing over her with a satisfied smile. "You should have known your place, you little nobody." Eleanor lay on the floor, stunned, her cheek burning with pain. She looked up at Raymond, this man she had once loved, this man she had given up everything for, and she saw nothing but coldness in his eyes. "I want her out of here," Raymond said to someone Eleanor hadn't noticed before. A large man in a security uniform standing in the hallway. "Take her somewhere far away. Somewhere she won't be able to cause problems." "No," Eleanor whispered, fear flooding through her. "No, please." "Boss, what do you mean exactly?" the security guard asked, looking uncomfortable. "I mean make her disappear, Marcus," Raymond said impatiently. "There's an abandoned factory district on the east side. Take her there, leave her, and make sure she can't find her way back. By the time she figures out where she is, if she figures it out, I'll have the divorce finalized and she'll have no legal standing to contest anything." "But sir, that area is dangerous. It's been condemned. There's no food, no water. Do I pay you to question me or to follow orders?" Raymond snapped. The guard, Marcus, looked at Eleanor with something like pity in his eyes, but he nodded. "Yes, sir." Eleanor tried to fight as Marcus picked her up, but she was too small, too weak. She screamed and kicked, but Veronica just laughed. "Goodbye, Eleanor," Veronica called out cheerfully, waving like she was seeing off a friend. "Thanks for keeping Raymond's bed warm for me." The last thing Eleanor saw before being carried out of the mansion was Raymond kissing Veronica, not even looking in Eleanor's direction. She had meant nothing to him. After everything, she had meant absolutely nothing. Marcus carried Eleanor through the mansion and out a back entrance that Eleanor hadn't even known existed. There was a plain black van waiting, and Marcus put her inside, locking the door. Eleanor pounded on the windows, screaming for help, but the van's windows were tinted so dark that nobody outside could see or hear her. They drove for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 45 minutes. Eleanor watched through the windshield as the beautiful, clean streets of Rosewood Heights gradually gave way to rundown neighborhoods, then to industrial areas, and finally to a part of town that looked like it had been abandoned years ago. Buildings with broken windows stood like hollow corpses. Streets were cracked and filled with potholes. There wasn't a single person in sight. Not a single light in any window. This was the East Side Factory District. Eleanor had heard about it on the news once. Years ago, it had been a thriving industrial area, but after the factories closed down, it had become a ghost town. The city had condemned the entire area, planning to demolish it and rebuild, but funding had fallen through. Now it was just forgotten, left to rot. The perfect place to abandon someone. Marcus stopped the van in front of the largest building. A massive old textile factory with a crumbling brick facade and a partially collapsed roof. "I'm sorry," Marcus said as he opened the van door. He actually did look sorry. "I don't want to do this, but I need this job. I have a family to feed." "Please," Eleanor begged, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't leave me here. I'll die out here. There's nothing, no food, no water, no people. Please." Marcus looked away, clearly struggling with his conscience. "Mr. Wellington said you'd find your way back eventually. It's only about 15 miles to civilization. If you start walking, you'll make it." 15 miles? Through this? Eleanor gestured at the desolate, dangerous-looking area around them. "It's getting dark. Please, at least leave me some water, some food." Marcus hesitated, then reached into the van and pulled out a bottle of water. He handed it to Eleanor. "That's all I can do," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." Before Eleanor could say anything else, Marcus got back in the van and drove away, leaving her standing alone in the failing light of early evening. Eleanor stood there, clutching the single bottle of water, and felt true despair for the first time in her life. The sun was setting, painting the sky blood red. In a few minutes, it would be completely dark, and Eleanor would be alone in this nightmare landscape with no phone. Raymond had taken it. No money, no food, and only one bottle of water. She looked around, trying to decide what to do. Should she try to walk? But which direction? Everything looked the same. Abandoned buildings and empty streets stretching in every direction. If she chose the wrong way, she could walk for hours and only get more lost. Plus, her feet hurt. She was wearing the expensive designer shoes Raymond had bought her. Beautiful but completely impractical for walking long distances. Eleanor made a decision. It was getting dark fast, and wandering around in the dark seemed like a recipe for disaster. She would shelter in the factory for the night, get some rest, and start walking at first light when she could see where she was going. The factory's main entrance was blocked by a chain and a danger, condemned building sign, but there was a side door that hung open on broken hinges. Eleanor slipped inside, using her hand to guide herself as her eyes adjusted to the darkness. The inside of the factory was like something from a nightmare. Huge machines stood frozen in time, covered in rust and dust. Broken glass littered the floor. The ceiling had holes in it, and Eleanor could see the darkening sky through the gaps. But in one corner, she found what looked like an old office. It had 4 walls and a door that still closed. It wasn't much, but it would keep her safe from whatever might be outside in the night. Eleanor sat down on the cold concrete floor, hugged her knees to her chest, and finally let herself cry. She cried for the naive girl she had been, who had believed in love and fairy tales. She cried for the 5 years she had wasted on a man who had never loved her. She cried for her loneliness, her fear, her complete and utter helplessness in this situation. But mostly, she cried because she realized something horrible. Raymond was right. He and his family were powerful enough to make her disappear. Even if she made it back to civilization, who would believe her? Raymond would paint her as crazy, vindictive, a gold digger making up lies. The Wellington family controlled everything. They could make her life so miserable that she would wish she had stayed in this abandoned factory. Eleanor cried until she had no tears left. Then she took a small sip of water. She had to make it last and tried to sleep. But sleep didn't come easily. Every sound in the old factory made her jump. The creaking of metal, the scurrying of rats, the whistle of wind through broken windows. Eleanor was terrified, cold, and more alone than she had ever been in her entire life. Eleanor had thought she would leave at first light. But when morning came, she felt weak and dizzy. The stress of everything, combined with only one small sip of water and no food, had taken its toll on her body. "I just need to rest a little more," she told herself. "Just a few more hours, and then I'll have the strength to walk." But those few hours turned into a full day, and then another day, and another. Eleanor didn't understand what was happening to her. She had always been healthy, strong. But now her body felt like it was shutting down. She was so tired she could barely move. Her head pounded constantly. Her mouth was so dry it hurt to swallow. By the third day, Eleanor realized she was in serious trouble. The single bottle of water was gone. She had tried to make it last, but 3 days was a long time with no water. She needed to find water or she was going to die. With tremendous effort, Eleanor dragged herself out of the office and began exploring the factory, looking for anything. A faucet, a puddle, anything. She found a bathroom on the second floor, but when she tried the faucets, only rust came out. The pipes had been shut off years ago. Eleanor felt panic rising in her chest. She was going to die here, in this horrible, abandoned place, all alone. She was going to die, and nobody would even know what happened to her. "No," she said out loud, her voice cracking. "No, I won't die here. I won't give Raymond that satisfaction." She would walk. Even if she collapsed, even if she died trying, she would walk. Eleanor made it down the stairs and to the factory's main floor before her legs gave out. She fell hard, pain shooting through her knees, and didn't have the strength to get back up. She lay there on the cold, dirty floor, staring at dust particles floating in the sunlight streaming through the broken windows, and thought about her life. She thought about her parents, how much she missed them, how they would be heartbroken if they knew what had happened to their daughter. She thought about the little girl she had been, full of dreams and hope. She thought about her students, those sweet kindergartners who had loved her and drawn her pictures and given her sticky hugs. Where had that Eleanor gone? When had she lost herself so completely? "I'm sorry, Mama," Eleanor whispered to the empty air. "I'm sorry I let myself get into this situation. I should have been stronger. I should have left when I first found out the truth." Day 4 came and went. Eleanor barely moved. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her body shutting down from dehydration and starvation. On day 5, Eleanor didn't even remember where she was anymore. She was hallucinating, seeing her mother standing in the corner of the factory, reaching out to her. She saw her father sitting beside her, stroking her hair like he used to when she was sick as a child. "It's okay, sweetheart," her father's voice said gently. "You can rest now. We're here." Eleanor wanted to rest. She was so tired. By day 6, Eleanor had dragged herself into the darkest corner of the factory. She was too weak to even lift her head. Her heart was beating irregularly, and her breathing was shallow. She had accepted it now. She was going to die here. At least, she thought, Raymond would never get the satisfaction of seeing her broken. At least she would die on her own terms, not signing his papers, not giving him what he wanted. It was a small victory, but it was all she had. Eleanor closed her eyes and waited for the end. But Eleanor had forgotten something important, something that neither she nor Raymond had considered in all of this. Marcus Wellington, the security guard who had abandoned her here, was the younger brother of Marcus Wellington, the billionaire founder of Wellington Technologies and Raymond's father. Big Marcus, the billionaire, was a complicated man. He was ruthless in business, cold in many ways, but he loved 3 things deeply: his company, his dogs, and the principles his own father had taught him about honor and family. And Big Marcus had a dog named Atlas, a magnificent German shepherd that had cost $50,000 and had the best training money could buy. Atlas was more than a pet. He was Big Marcus's constant companion, his friend, his responsibility. Big Marcus took Atlas for a walk every single morning through the streets of Rosewood Heights. It was his meditation time, his chance to clear his head before diving into the business day. But on this particular Wednesday morning, exactly 6 days after Eleanor had been abandoned, Atlas was behaving strangely. The dog kept pulling on his leash, trying to lead Big Marcus in a direction they never went. Toward the east side. "Atlas, heel," Big Marcus commanded, but Atlas wouldn't listen. The dog whined and pulled harder, his behavior completely out of character for such a well-trained animal. Big Marcus frowned. In all the years he had owned Atlas, the dog had never acted like this. Something was wrong. "What is it, boy?" Big Marcus asked, kneeling down to look at Atlas. "What's got you so worked up?" Atlas looked at Big Marcus with intense, urgent eyes, and barked once. Then he did something shocking. He lunged forward with such force that the leash slipped right out of Big Marcus's hands. And Atlas ran. He ran like his life depended on it. Through the streets, past surprised pedestrians, past other dogs, past everything. He ran with purpose, with determination, like he knew exactly where he was going. Big Marcus shouted after him, then cursed and started running too, pulling out his phone to call his driver. But Atlas was fast, too fast. By the time Big Marcus got in the car and started following, Atlas had already disappeared into the distance. The driver chased Atlas's path through the city, following the occasional glimpse of German Shepherd fur disappearing around corners. And Big Marcus watched with growing concern as the neighborhoods got worse and worse, until finally, they reached the condemned factory district. "Stop here," Big Marcus said, getting out of the car. He went in there somewhere, and that's when Big Marcus heard it, the sound that would change everything. Atlas's howl. Not a bark, not a whine, a howl, the kind of sound dogs make when they find something terrible, something that requires human help immediately. Big Marcus ran toward the sound, his expensive shoes pounding on the broken concrete, his heart racing. He burst through the side door of the old textile factory and followed the sound of Atlas's howls to the darkest corner of the building. And there, illuminated by the beam of Big Marcus's phone flashlight, was a sight that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A woman, lying curled on the floor, barely breathing. Atlas was lying beside her, whining softly, licking her face desperately as if trying to wake her up. Big Marcus dropped to his knees beside the woman, checking for a pulse. It was there, but barely. She was alive, but just barely. That's when Big Marcus noticed two things that made his blood run cold. First, the woman's face. Even though it was dirty and gaunt from days without food or water, even though her lips were cracked and her skin was deathly pale, Big Marcus recognized her. This was Eleanor, his daughter-in-law, the quiet, sweet girl his son had married and then promptly started treating like garbage. Big Marcus had never approved of how Raymond treated Eleanor, but he hadn't interfered. It wasn't his place to manage his adult son's marriage, he had told himself. Now he realized what a mistake that had been. The second thing Big Marcus noticed made him even colder. On Eleanor's wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve, were bruises. Finger-shaped bruises, like someone had grabbed her hard. And suddenly, Big Marcus understood what must have happened. Raymond had done something to her. His son had hurt this innocent woman and abandoned her here to die. "Call an ambulance," Big Marcus shouted to his driver. "Now!" He took off his expensive jacket and carefully wrapped it around Eleanor's frail body. "Hold on," he whispered to her. "Hold on, Eleanor. Help is coming." Eleanor's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. She looked at Big Marcus, but there was no recognition in her eyes. She was too far gone. Her lips moved, trying to form words, but no sound came out. "Don't try to talk," Big Marcus said gently. "Save your strength." Atlas whined and pressed closer to Eleanor, as if trying to keep her warm with his body heat. Within 6 minutes, Big Marcus had paid the local emergency services well to ensure fast response times in his area. An ambulance arrived, sirens wailing. The paramedics rushed in, immediately starting IVs and checking Eleanor's vital signs. "She's severely dehydrated," one paramedic said grimly, "and hypothermia. Blood pressure is dangerously low. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." They loaded Eleanor onto a stretcher, and Big Marcus followed them to the ambulance. "I'm coming with her," he said firmly when one paramedic tried to stop him. "That's my daughter-in-law, and I need to know she's going to be okay." At the hospital, Eleanor was rushed into the ICU. Doctors and nurses swarmed around her, hooking her up to machines, pumping her full of fluids and nutrients. Big Marcus stood outside the ICU room, watching through the window with Atlas sitting loyally at his feet. A doctor came out looking grave. "Mr. Wellington," the doctor said, recognizing him immediately. Everyone in Rosewood Heights knew Big Marcus Wellington. "Your daughter-in-law is in critical condition. She was maybe 12 hours away from death. Complete organ failure." Whoever left her in that place without food or water was essentially trying to kill her. Big Marcus's jaw clenched. Will she survive? We're doing everything we can. The next 24 hours will tell us if there's been any permanent damage. But I have to ask, Mr. Wellington, what happened to her? How did she end up in that abandoned factory? Should we be calling the police? Big Marcus looked at the doctor for a long moment. Then he said, "Give me 24 hours. If she survives, she can decide whether to press charges. But first, I need to have a conversation with my son." The doctor nodded slowly, understanding there was something much bigger happening here than he was privy to. Big Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. "Get Raymond to the mansion. Now, I don't care what meeting he's in or what he's doing. I want him there in 30 minutes, or I'll drag him there myself." Then Big Marcus sat down in the hospital waiting room, with Atlas lying at his feet, and began piecing together what must have happened. Raymond had abandoned his wife to die in that factory. His own son was a would-be murderer, and somehow, impossibly, Atlas, beautiful, loyal Atlas, had known. The dog had sensed something was wrong and had run 6 miles to find Eleanor, led by some instinct that humans would never understand. Big Marcus looked down at Atlas and gently scratched behind the dog's ears. "You saved her life, boy. You're a hero." Atlas looked up at Big Marcus with those intelligent eyes and made a soft noise, as if to say, "I know, but will she be okay?" That was the question nobody could answer yet. Inside the ICU, Eleanor lay surrounded by machines, fighting for her life, completely unaware that she had been found, that she had been saved, and that the man who had saved her was about to turn his son's entire world upside down. What will happen when Big Marcus confronts Raymond? Will Eleanor survive and wake up? And what role will Veronica play when she finds out Eleanor has been found alive? Asterisk asterisk. The twists are just beginning, and what comes next will shock everyone involved. Big Marcus Wellington sat in his study, a room lined with mahogany shelves filled with leather-bound books and awards from 40 years of building his technology empire. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, he wasn't a billionaire or a business legend. He was a father about to confront his son about attempted murder. The grandfather clock in the corner showed 9:47 p.m. Raymond was late, exactly 17 minutes late, and Big Marcus knew this was intentional. His son was making a power play, trying to show that even his father couldn't summon him like a child. But Raymond had no idea what was waiting for him. Atlas lay at Big Marcus's feet, and every few minutes, the dog would whine softly, as if remembering the dying woman he had found just hours earlier. Big Marcus reached down and stroked the dog's head, finding comfort in the simple loyalty of an animal, a loyalty his own son clearly lacked. The door to the study finally swung open, and Raymond walked in, not a care in the world. He was wearing an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled, and there was actually a smile on his face. "Father," Raymond said, his voice dripping with fake cheerfulness. "You wanted to see me? I'm afraid I can't stay long. Veronica and I have dinner reservations at—" "Sit down," Big Marcus said, his voice like iron. Something in his father's tone made Raymond pause. The smile faded slightly. "Father, if this is about the quarterly reports, I can explain." I said, "Sit down." This time, Big Marcus's voice was so cold that even Raymond, who feared nothing, felt a chill run down his spine. Raymond sat. Big Marcus stood up slowly, walking to the window that overlooked the mansion's gardens. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared out at the darkness beyond the glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but filled with a rage that Raymond had never heard before. "Do you know where I was today, Raymond?" No, father." "Where?" "I was at Mercy General Hospital," Big Marcus said, still not turning around. "In the ICU, watching doctors fight to save a young woman's life. A woman who had been abandoned in a condemned factory with no food, no water, and no way to call for help. A woman who had been left there to die slowly, painfully, alone." Raymond's face went pale. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in his adult life, he didn't know what to say. Big Marcus finally turned around, and the look in his eyes made Raymond actually flinch. That woman, Big Marcus continued, was Eleanor. Your wife. The woman you promised to love and protect when you married her 5 years ago. Father, I can explain. Explain. Big Marcus's voice exploded like thunder, making Raymond jump. Atlas even got to his feet, sensing his master's rage. You're going to explain why your wife was dying in an abandoned building? You're going to explain why she had bruises on her wrist from where someone grabbed her? You're going to explain why she was hours away from death. Raymond's face had gone from pale to red. But instead of shame or guilt, what emerged was anger, pure defensive anger. She was causing problems. Raymond shouted, standing up. She was threatening to ruin everything, to go to the press, to make up lies about me and Veronica. I had to do something. So you tried to kill her? Big Marcus couldn't believe what he was hearing. Your solution was murder? I didn't try to kill her. Raymond protested, but his voice wavered. I just wanted her out of the way for a few days while my lawyers finalized the divorce. Marcus said the factory was only 15 miles from town. She could have walked back any time. It's not my fault she decided to stay there and be dramatic. Big Marcus stared at his son like he was looking at a stranger. 15 miles? Raymond, your wife is 110 pounds. She had no food, no water, no phone. She was wearing heels. Did you really think she could walk 15 miles through a condemned industrial zone? She should have figured it out, Raymond said stubbornly. She's an adult. She almost died. Big Marcus slammed his hand on the desk so hard that everything on it jumped. If Atlas hadn't found her, if my dog hadn't somehow known something was wrong and run all the way to that factory, Eleanor would be dead right now. Dead, Raymond. And you would be a murderer. For a moment, genuine fear flickered in Raymond's eyes. Is she going to survive? I don't know, Big Marcus said coldly. The doctors say the next 24 hours are critical. She's on machines, fighting for her life, because of what you did. Raymond sat back down, and for the first time, the reality of what he had done seemed to sink in. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said quietly. I just wanted her gone, out of my life. I thought. You didn't think, Big Marcus interrupted. That's the problem. You never think about anyone but yourself. Just like you didn't think about what it would do to Eleanor when you married her as part of some sick game to impress me. Raymond's head snapped up. You knew about that? Of course I knew, Big Marcus said bitterly. You think I'm an idiot? I knew you didn't love Eleanor. I knew you were still seeing that gold digger Veronica behind her back. But I hoped that maybe living with a good, genuine person like Eleanor would change you. That maybe you'd grow up, become a real man instead of a spoiled child. Eleanor was never right for this family, Raymond said defensively. She was a kindergarten teacher, for God's sake. She didn't understand our world, how things work at our level. She was always so pathetic, always crying, always trying to please everyone. It was exhausting. She was kind, Big Marcus roared. She was genuine. She was everything that this rotten, corrupt family needed. And you destroyed her, Raymond. You took a sweet, loving woman and you broke her into pieces. And then, when she finally got the courage to leave, you tried to murder her. I already told you, I didn't try to. Yes, you did. Big Marcus cut him off. Maybe you didn't put a gun to her head. But abandoning someone in a condemned building with no resources is the same thing. It's just slower, crueler. If anything, it's worse than shooting her. At least a bullet would have been quick. The room fell into a terrible silence. Raymond sat with his head in his hands, and for a brief moment, Big Marcus almost felt sorry for his son. Almost. What happens now? Raymond finally asked, his voice small. Big Marcus took a deep breath, controlling his rage. What happens now is that you are going to pray that Eleanor survives. Because if she dies, Raymond, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison. I don't care how much it costs, I don't care what strings I have to pull. You will pay for what you did. You wouldn't, Raymond said, looking up with shock. I'm your son. You wouldn't destroy your own son. You're right, Big Marcus said coldly. I wouldn't destroy my son. But the Raymond I raised, the boy I loved, would never have done something like this. The man sitting in front of me right now, I don't know who you are. And if Eleanor dies, I will have no problem watching you face justice. Raymond stood up, his face a mixture of fear and defiance. And if she lives? If she lives, Big Marcus said slowly, then you are going to make this right. You're going to give Eleanor the divorce she wants, and you're going to give her a settlement that reflects 5 years of marriage to a Wellington. $20 million. A house. And a public apology for how you treated her. 20 million? Raymond exploded. Are you insane? The prenup says. I don't care what the prenup says, Big Marcus shouted. You tried to kill her, Raymond. 20 million is a bargain compared to what a wrongful death lawsuit would cost this family. Not to mention the PR nightmare when the press finds out that Wellington Technologies' heir is a wife murderer. Raymond's face twisted with rage and frustration. This is all Eleanor's fault, he muttered. If she had just signed the papers quietly, none of this would have happened. Big Marcus felt something inside him break. All these years, he had made excuses for Raymond's behavior. He had told himself that his son was just ambitious, just driven, just operating by different rules. But now he saw the truth. His son was a monster. A selfish, cruel, heartless monster. Get out, Big Marcus said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Get out of my sight. I can't even look at you right now. Father. Now. Big Marcus pointed to the door. And Raymond? You're suspended from the company. Effective immediately. You don't set foot in Wellington Technologies until this situation is resolved. You don't make any business decisions, you don't speak to the press, you don't do anything. Am I clear? Raymond stood there, his face red with humiliation and rage. You can't do this to me. I'm your heir. The company is supposed to be mine someday. The company will go to someone who deserves it, Big Marcus said coldly. Someone with honor, integrity, and basic human decency. Clearly, that's not you. Now get out before I have security throw you out. For a moment it looked like Raymond might argue more. But something in his father's eyes told him this was not a battle he could win. Not tonight. Raymond turned and stormed out of the study, slamming the door so hard that a picture fell off the wall. Big Marcus stood there for a long moment, feeling older than his 67 years. Then he looked down at Atlas, who was watching him with concerned eyes. Good boy, Big Marcus whispered, kneeling down to hug the dog. You're the real hero in all of this. You saved her when no one else could. Atlas licked Big Marcus's face, and for the first time that day, Big Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. He had failed Eleanor. He had known his son was treating her badly, and he had done nothing. He had told himself it wasn't his place to interfere in his son's marriage, but that had been cowardice. He should have protected Eleanor. He should have done something, but he would make it right now. If Eleanor survived, Big Marcus would make sure she got everything she deserved and more. And if she didn't survive, well, then Raymond would learn that there are some lines you don't cross even if you're a Wellington. While Big Marcus was confronting his son, Eleanor was fighting a battle of her own in the ICU at Mercy General Hospital. She was floating in darkness, a thick, heavy darkness that felt like being underwater. Sometimes she would hear voices, muffled and distant, like they were coming from another world. Sometimes she would feel pain, sharp and bright, pulling her toward consciousness. But mostly, there was just the darkness and the feeling of being very, very tired. In her dreams, or maybe they were hallucinations, Eleanor saw her mother. Mama, Eleanor whispered, though her lips didn't move in the real world. Mama, I'm so tired. Her mother looked exactly as she had before the car accident that took her life. Beautiful, with warm brown eyes and a gentle smile. She was sitting in a chair beside Eleanor's hospital bed, though of course this wasn't really happening. It was just Eleanor's mind creating comfort where there was none. I know you're tired, baby girl, her mother said, reaching out to stroke Eleanor's hair. You've been through so much. It would be so easy to just let go, wouldn't it? To just stop fighting and come with me? Yes, Eleanor said, feeling relief at the idea. Yes, I want to stop fighting, Mama. I'm so tired of being hurt, so tired of being alone. But you're not alone anymore, Eleanor, her mother said gently. There's a dog sitting outside your hospital room right now, a beautiful German shepherd who ran 6 miles to find you. He's waiting for you to wake up. A dog? Eleanor was confused. Why would a dog care about me? Because you're worth caring about, her mother said firmly. You've forgotten that, haven't you? You let Raymond and his horrible mother convince you that you're worthless, that you're nothing. But that's not true, Eleanor. It never was. Tears rolled down Eleanor's cheeks, though in the hospital room, her body remained still. I feel so broken, Mama. I don't know how to be whole again. One piece at a time, baby, her mother said. Just like when you fell off your bike when you were 7, remember? You scraped your knee so badly I thought we'd have to go to the hospital. And you cried and said you'd never ride a bike again. But what did I tell you? You said that healing takes time, Eleanor remembered. That I had to be patient with myself. That's right. And look, you got back on that bike 2 weeks later and you rode it all summer long. You were so proud of yourself. But this is different, Mama. My knee was just a scrape. This. Eleanor gestured to her heart, her soul, all the broken pieces inside her. This is everything. I know, her mother said, her voice full of love and sadness. I know Raymond hurt you in ways that go much deeper than any physical wound. But Eleanor, listen to me. You are strong. You survived 6 days in that factory. 6 days with no food or water. Do you know how incredible that is? Most people would have given up after 2 days. But you didn't. You kept fighting. I didn't feel strong, Eleanor whispered. I felt like I was dying. You were dying, her mother said gently. But some part of you, some deep, powerful part, refused to let go completely. That strength, baby girl. Real strength. Not the kind that shows off or makes noise, but the quiet kind that keeps you breathing when everything else says stop. Eleanor wanted to believe her mother. She wanted to believe she was strong. But she felt so small, so broken. What if I wake up and Raymond is still there? Eleanor asked, fear creeping into her voice. What if he tries to hurt me again? Then you fight, her mother said firmly. But Eleanor, I need to tell you something. Raymond's father found you. Big Marcus. And from what I can see, she gestured vaguely to the world beyond this dream. He's not on Raymond's side anymore. He knows what his son did to you. Big Marcus knows? Eleanor felt a flutter of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But he never cared about me before. He barely even looked at me at family dinners. People can surprise you, her mother said. Sometimes it takes something terrible happening for people to see what's really important. Marcus Wellington may be a ruthless businessman, but he's not evil. And what Raymond did to you, that crossed a line even for him. Eleanor felt herself being pulled, like a tide was tugging at her. The darkness was getting lighter, brighter. She could hear voices more clearly now. A doctor saying something about vital signs stabilizing, a nurse mentioning increased responsiveness. Mama, I don't want you to go, Eleanor said desperately, reaching for her mother. I'm not going anywhere. Baby, her mother said, smiling through tears. I'm always with you right here. She touched Eleanor's chest, right over her heart. But you need to go back now. You need to wake up and start living again. Really living, not just surviving. I'm scared, Eleanor admitted. I know. But you know what? Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. Being brave means being scared and doing the hard thing anyway. The light was getting brighter and brighter, and Eleanor's mother was starting to fade. I love you, Mama, Eleanor called out. I love you too, Eleanor. Forever and always. Now wake up, baby girl. Wake up and show the world what you're made of. Eleanor's eyes fluttered open. The first thing she saw was a white ceiling with fluorescent lights. The first thing she heard was a steady beeping sound. The first thing she felt was an incredible, overwhelming thirst. Where? Eleanor tried to speak, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Immediately, a nurse appeared in her field of vision. A kind-looking woman with gray hair and gentle eyes. "Oh, thank God," the nurse said, pressing a button. "She's awake, Dr. Chun. She's awake." Within seconds, the room was filled with people. Doctors, nurses, all moving quickly, checking machines, shining lights in Eleanor's eyes, asking her questions. "Eleanor, can you hear me?" a doctor asked, a man with kind eyes and a calm voice. "I'm Dr. Chun. You're in the hospital. You're safe now. Can you squeeze my hand?" Eleanor tried to squeeze, and was shocked by how weak her grip was. Everything felt heavy, like her body was made of lead. "That's good. That's very good," Dr. Chun said encouragingly. "Eleanor, do you remember what happened to you?" Images flashed through Eleanor's mind. Raymond's cold eyes, Veronica's cruel smile, the abandoned factory, the terrible, desperate thirst, days of darkness and fear. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, and she started to shake. Hey, it's okay," the nurse said gently, taking Eleanor's hand. "You're safe now. Nobody is going to hurt you here." "Raymond," Eleanor managed to whisper. "He's not here," Dr. Chun said firmly. "And he won't be allowed anywhere near you without your permission. You're safe, Eleanor. I promise you're safe." Eleanor wanted to believe him, but 5 years of Raymond's control had taught her that safety was an illusion. He always got what he wanted. He always won. "We need to run some tests, Eleanor," Dr. Chun continued. "But first, there's someone who's been waiting very patiently to see you. Well, not really a someone. More like a someone with 4 legs." Eleanor was confused until the nurse opened the door and a large German shepherd walked in, accompanied by an older man Eleanor recognized with shock. Big Marcus Wellington. Raymond's father stood in the doorway, looking at Eleanor with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Guilt, sadness, and something that looked almost like respect. But Eleanor barely noticed him because the dog, the beautiful, magnificent German shepherd, walked straight to her bedside and gently placed his head on the edge of her bed, looking up at her with deep, intelligent eyes. "This is Atlas," Big Marcus said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "He's the one who found you, Eleanor. He ran 6 miles to that factory. Somehow he knew you needed help. He saved your life." Eleanor lifted her weak hand and placed it on Atlas's head. The dog's fur was soft and warm, and when Eleanor touched him, Atlas made a small, happy sound and very gently licked her hand. Something inside Eleanor broke open. All the fear, all the pain, all the loneliness of the past 5 years came flooding out. She started to cry, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Atlas whined and tried to get closer, and Dr. Chun, understanding that this was what Eleanor needed, nodded to the nurse. "It's against hospital policy," the nurse said with a small smile, "but I think we can make an exception." She lowered the railing on the hospital bed, and Atlas very carefully, very gently, placed his front paws on the bed and laid his head on Eleanor's chest, right over her heart. And Eleanor, this woman who had been so alone, so abandoned, so hurt, wrapped her arms around this dog who had saved her and cried into his fur while Atlas stayed perfectly still, lending her his strength and warmth and unconditional love. Big Marcus watched from the doorway, and for the second time that day, tears rolled down his face. Dr. Chun quietly ushered the other medical staff out of the room, giving Eleanor this moment of healing. Sometimes medicine wasn't about pills or procedures. Sometimes it was about love and connection and the simple comfort of a loyal creature who asked for nothing in return. Eleanor cried for 10 minutes straight while Atlas didn't move a muscle, just stayed there, solid and warm and real, proving that she wasn't alone anymore. Finally, when Eleanor had no more tears left, she pulled back slightly and looked at Atlas through red, swollen eyes. "Thank you," she whispered to the dog. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for not giving up on me when I had given up on myself." Atlas licked her face gently, as if to say, You're welcome. That's what friends do. Eleanor looked past Atlas to where Big Marcus still stood in the doorway, and their eyes met. Mr. Wellington, Eleanor said, her voice stronger now despite everything. Does Raymond know I'm alive? Big Marcus nodded slowly. He knows. And Eleanor, I need to tell you something. I need to apologize to you. I knew my son was treating you badly, and I did nothing. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere, but that was cowardice. I should have protected you. I should have done something. I'm so sorry. Eleanor stared at this powerful man, this billionaire who controlled everything and everyone in Rosewood Heights, and saw something she never expected to see. Genuine remorse. What happens now? Eleanor asked quietly. Now, Big Marcus said, you get better. You heal. And when you're ready, we'll deal with Raymond and the legal matters. But Eleanor, I want you to know something. You have my protection now. Raymond will never hurt you again. I give you my word. Why should I trust you? Eleanor asked, not cruelly, just honestly. You're his father. Family always protects family in your world. You're right, Big Marcus admitted. Family does protect family. But Eleanor, the moment you married my son, you became family too. And I failed you. I won't make that mistake again. Raymond crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. What he did to you, that's not just about being a bad husband. That's attempted murder. And I won't protect him from the consequences of that. Eleanor wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing, and hers had been shattered so completely. As if sensing her doubt, Big Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Eleanor the screen. It was an email sent just an hour ago to Wellington Technologies' entire board of directors. The subject line read, Temporary suspension of Raymond Wellington, effective immediately. Eleanor read the email with growing shock. In it, Big Marcus had informed the board that Raymond was being suspended from all company duties, pending an investigation into serious personal conduct issues. He hadn't given details, but the message was clear. Raymond's position in the company was in jeopardy. That's my son's entire world, Big Marcus said quietly. Wellington Technologies is everything to him. He spent his whole life working to prove he deserves to take over when I retire. And I just took it away from him, Eleanor. I took it away because what he did to you was unforgivable. Does that help you trust that I'm on your side now? Eleanor looked at the email, then at Big Marcus, then down at Atlas, who was still resting his head on her chest, a warm, comforting weight. I don't know if I can trust anyone right now, Eleanor admitted. But thank you for suspending him, for bringing Atlas, for being here. I'm going to do more than that, Big Marcus said, pulling up a chair and sitting down. Eleanor, when you're ready, I want to help you get back on your feet. Proper divorce settlement, money for a new start, place to live, whatever you need. But more than that, I want to make sure Raymond faces consequences for what he did to you. Not just social consequences or financial ones. Real consequences. Criminal consequences if you want to press charges. He tried to kill me, Eleanor said, the words feeling surreal even as she spoke them. He left me in that factory to die. If Atlas hadn't found me. I know, Big Marcus said, his voice heavy. And if you want to go to the police, I will support you completely. I'll make sure the best lawyers represent you. I'll make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug or buried by the Wellington name. It's your choice, Eleanor. Whatever you decide, I'll back you up. Eleanor closed her eyes, overwhelmed. 24 hours ago, she had been dying alone in an abandoned building, convinced that nobody cared whether she lived or died. And now, she was in a hospital bed, protected by a billionaire and a hero dog, being offered justice on a silver platter. It was too much. It was all too much. I need time, Eleanor whispered. I need time to think, to heal, to figure out who I even am anymore after everything Raymond did to me. You have all the time you need, Big Marcus assured her. Atlas and I will be here. And Eleanor? One more thing. I've hired private security to watch your hospital room. Nobody gets in without your explicit permission. Not Raymond, not Victoria, not anyone. You're safe here. I promise. As if on cue, a large, professional-looking man appeared in the doorway, nodded to Big Marcus, and took up a position outside Eleanor's room. Eleanor looked at this security guard, protection she never thought she'd have, and felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Took her a moment to recognize what it was. Hope. While Eleanor was waking up and beginning her long journey toward healing, Raymond Wellington was having the worst night of his life. He had left his father's mansion in a rage, driving too fast through the streets of Rosewood Heights, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. He can't do this to me, Raymond muttered to himself. He can't just suspend me like I'm some entry-level employee. I'm his son. I'm the heir to Wellington Technologies. But even as he said it, Raymond knew the truth. His father absolutely could do this. Big Marcus Wellington owned 60% of the company's stock. He was the founder, the CEO, the emperor of the Wellington Empire. And if he wanted to suspend his son, nothing Raymond could do would stop him. Raymond pulled into the driveway of his penthouse apartment, a sleek, modern building where he had been staying for the past week with Veronica. He had barely been to the mansion since he'd arranged for Eleanor to be taken away. Veronica was waiting for him when he walked in, looking stunning in a red dress, her makeup perfect, a glass of expensive wine in her hand. "There you are," Veronica said brightly. "I was beginning to think you forgot about our dinner reservation. We need to leave in 15 minutes if we're going to." She stopped when she saw Raymond's face. "What happened?" Veronica asked, her smile fading. "You look terrible." "Eleanor's alive," Raymond said flatly, pouring himself a drink from the bar. "My father's dog found her. She's in the hospital." Veronica's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor in a shower of glass and red wine that looked disturbingly like blood. "What?" Veronica's voice was barely a whisper. "How is that possible?" Marcus said he left her in the middle of nowhere. "Apparently, my father's dog ran 6 miles to that factory and found her just before she died," Raymond said bitterly, downing his drink in one gulp. "And now my father knows everything. He suspended me from the company, Veronica. He threatened to turn me in to the police if Eleanor dies. If she dies." Veronica's face had gone pale under her makeup. "Raymond, is she going to die?" "I don't know," Raymond shouted, pouring another drink. "My father wouldn't tell me anything, just that she's critical and the next 24 hours will determine if she survives." Veronica stood there, pieces of broken glass at her feet, her perfect composure crumbling. "This is bad," she said, starting to pace. "Raymond, this is really bad. If Eleanor dies, you could go to prison. And if she lives, she could press charges, testify against you. Either way, we're in serious trouble." "I know that," Raymond yelled, throwing his glass against the wall where it shattered. "Don't you think I know that?" Veronica flinched at his anger, but then her expression hardened. This was the woman who had been Raymond's mistress for 7 years, the woman who had patiently waited for him to get rid of Eleanor, the woman who had convinced herself that she deserved the Wellington fortune more than some nobody school teacher. "We need a plan," Veronica said, her voice cold and calculating now. "We need to control this situation before it controls us." "What kind of plan?" Raymond asked bitterly. "My father has already decided I'm guilty. He's protecting Eleanor now. There's nothing we can do." "There's always something we can do," Veronica said, her eyes glittering with a dangerous light. "We just have to be smart about it. Strategic." She walked over to Raymond, carefully avoiding the broken glass, and took his face in her hands. "Listen to me, baby," Veronica said, her voice smooth as silk. "Eleanor is weak. She's always been weak. That's why it was so easy for you to control her for 5 years. And right now, she's at her absolute weakest, sick, traumatized, probably drugged up on pain medication. This is actually an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" Raymond asked, though he was already leaning into Veronica's touch, always so susceptible to her manipulation. "An opportunity for damage control," Veronica said. "Tomorrow morning you're going to go to that hospital. You're going to walk into Eleanor's room with flowers and tears, and you're going to apologize. You're going to tell her that you had a breakdown, that you weren't thinking clearly, that you were stressed about the company and you made a terrible mistake. You're going to beg for her forgiveness. She'll never believe me, Raymond said. She doesn't have to believe you, Veronica said impatiently. But if you apologize convincingly enough, if you offer her a generous settlement, if you appeal to that pathetic, forgiving nature of hers, maybe, just maybe, she won't press charges. And that's what we need right now. We need her to not press charges. Raymond thought about this, his business mind starting to work again. And if she does press charges anyway? Then we discredit her, Veronica said simply. We paint her as unstable, mentally ill, making up stories for attention. We say she ran away from the mansion after a fight, and you've been desperately searching for her, worried sick. We make her look like the crazy one. My father will never believe that, Raymond said. Your father isn't a judge or a jury, Veronica pointed out. And juries can be swayed, Raymond, especially when the defendant is a wealthy, handsome, respected businessman and the accuser is a troubled woman with no family and no friends to support her story. Raymond looked at Veronica with a mixture of admiration and horror. She was brilliant in her cruelty, he had to admit. This was why he loved her. She understood how to play the game, how to win no matter what the rules said. Okay, Raymond said slowly. Okay, I'll try. I'll go to the hospital tomorrow and apologize. But Veronica, what about my father? He's made it clear he's on Eleanor's side now. How do we deal with him? Veronica smiled. A cold, calculating smile that didn't reach her eyes. Your father is old, Raymond. He's 67 years old. How much longer can he really run Wellington Technologies? A year? 5 years? Eventually, he'll have to retire, and when he does, the company goes to you. You're his only heir. He can suspend you now, but he can't disinherit you. Not without destroying everything he's built. You think I should just wait him out? Raymond asked. I think you should play the long game, Veronica said. Apologize to Eleanor. Offer her a settlement that seems generous but isn't really. Keep your head down at the company. Show your father you're remorseful and changed. And eventually, this will all blow over. Eleanor will take the money and disappear. Your father will forgive you because that's what fathers do, and we'll get everything we've been working toward. Raymond pulled Veronica close and kissed her, finding comfort in her certainty, her ruthlessness, her absolute confidence that they would win in the end. But what neither Raymond nor Veronica knew was that Eleanor was no longer the weak, broken woman they thought she was. Being left to die had changed something fundamental in Eleanor. She had looked death in the face and survived. She had been abandoned by the one person who was supposed to protect her, and she had found a strength she never knew she had. The old Eleanor, the sweet, forgiving, trusting Eleanor, had died in that factory. The woman who had woken up in the hospital was someone new, someone stronger, someone who had been through fire and come out forged into steel. And she was done being a victim. 2 days after Eleanor woke up, she was moved from the ICU to a regular hospital room. She was still weak, still recovering, but the doctors said she was out of immediate danger. Her organs had survived the trauma, and with time and care, she would make a full physical recovery. The emotional recovery everyone knew would take much longer. Big Marcus visited Eleanor every day, always bringing Atlas with him. The hospital had made an exception to their no pets policy after Dr. Chan explained that the dog was essential to Eleanor's emotional recovery. Every time Atlas walked into the room, Eleanor's face would light up in a way it never had before. And every time she felt scared or overwhelmed, she would bury her fingers in Atlas's soft fur and find calm. On the 3rd day, Big Marcus brought Eleanor a surprise visitor. Eleanor, Big Marcus said gently, there's someone here who wants to see you, someone who's been worried sick about you. But if you're not ready for visitors, I can send her away. Who? Eleanor asked, confused. She had no family, and she hadn't spoken to her old friends since marrying Raymond. Who could possibly want to see her? Big Marcus opened the door, and a woman rushed in. A woman with curly blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a face that Eleanor recognized with shock and joy. Sophie, Eleanor gasped. Sophie, Eleanor's best friend from before her marriage, the roommate who had moved to Australia, ran to Eleanor's bedside and very carefully, very gently, hugged her while crying. "Oh my God, Ellie," Sophie sobbed, using Eleanor's old nickname. "Oh my God. When Mr. Wellington called me and told me what happened, I got on the first plane I could. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't here. I should never have moved away. I should never have let us lose touch." Eleanor was crying too, holding on to Sophie like she was a lifeline. "You're here," Eleanor kept saying. "You came back. You actually came back." "Of course I came back," Sophie said, pulling away to look at Eleanor's face. "Ellie, you're my best friend. We promised we'd always be there for each other. Remember? I'm so sorry I let that promise slip away." "It wasn't your fault," Eleanor said, wiping at her tears. "I'm the one who disappeared. After I married Raymond, I don't know. I got so lost in that world, in trying to be what he wanted me to be. I stopped answering your calls. I stopped being me." "That wasn't your fault either," Sophie said firmly. "From what Mr. Wellington told me, Raymond was controlling and manipulative. He isolated you on purpose, Ellie. That's what abusers do. They cut you off from everyone who loves you so that you're completely dependent on them." Eleanor looked at Big Marcus, surprised. "You called Sophie? You flew her here from Australia?" "It was the least I could do," Big Marcus said gruffly. "You need someone in your corner, Eleanor. Someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you can do for them or how you make them look." Sophie was the obvious choice. Sophie squeezed Eleanor's hand. "I'm not going anywhere, Ellie. I'm staying right here until you're back on your feet. I already quit my job in Australia and moved my stuff back. I'm staying." Eleanor burst into fresh tears, overwhelmed by this kindness she didn't deserve, this loyalty she had done nothing to earn. Sophie stayed with Eleanor for hours that day, catching her up on the last 5 years, making her laugh with stories about terrible dates and job mishaps, reminding Eleanor what it felt like to be loved unconditionally. When Sophie finally left to get some rest at a hotel Big Marcus had arranged for her, Eleanor felt more like herself than she had in years. But she also felt something else. Anger. For so long, Eleanor had blamed herself for everything that had gone wrong in her marriage. She had thought she wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, interesting enough for Raymond. She had convinced herself that if she just tried harder, he would love her. But now, seeing how quickly Sophie had dropped everything to be by her side, being protected by Big Marcus and his security team, being loved unconditionally by Atlas, Eleanor realized something important. The problem had never been her. The problem had always been Raymond. He was the one who had lied. He was the one who had betrayed his vows. He was the one who had abandoned his wife to die rather than face the consequences of his actions. And Eleanor was done making excuses for him. That night, Eleanor asked Big Marcus for a private meeting. He came with Atlas, as always, and sat in the chair beside her bed. "I want to press charges," Eleanor said, her voice clear and strong despite her physical weakness. "I want Raymond to face justice for what he did to me." Big Marcus looked at Eleanor with respect and sadness. "Are you sure, Eleanor? Going up against Raymond in court will be hard. His lawyers will try to destroy your credibility. They'll dig up everything they can about you, try to make you look bad. It won't be easy." "I'm sure," Eleanor said firmly. "For 5 years, I let Raymond and his mother make me feel small and worthless. I let them convince me that I deserved the way they treated me. But I don't deserve it, Mr. Wellington. Nobody deserves what Raymond did to me. And if I don't stand up now, if I don't hold him accountable, he'll just do it to someone else. Some other poor woman will fall for his lies and end up exactly where I was." "You're incredibly brave," Big Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. "And you're right. Raymond needs to face consequences. I'll make sure you have the best legal team money can buy. We'll build an airtight case." "I don't want your charity," Eleanor said quickly. "I know you're trying to make up for not protecting me before, but I don't want to just be another obligation to you." "You're not an obligation," Big Marcus said gently. "Eleanor, watching what happened to you, seeing how my son treated you, and finding you dying in that factory, It changed something in me. I've spent 40 years building a business empire, making money, accumulating power. But what's the point of any of that if I use my position to protect people like Raymond instead of people like you? You're not an obligation. You're a reminder of what really matters. Eleanor looked at this man who had been a stranger to her for 5 years of marriage, and saw genuine remorse and determination in his eyes. Okay, Eleanor said. Then let's do this. Let's make sure Raymond pays for what he did. Big Marcus nodded. I'll call my lawyers first thing in the morning. But Eleanor, there's something else we need to discuss. The media. The media? Eleanor felt a flutter of anxiety. Once this becomes public, once you press charges, the story is going to explode. The heir to Wellington Technologies attempted to murder his wife. The press will be all over it. Your life will be under a microscope. Are you prepared for that? Eleanor thought about it, her hand resting on Atlas's head, drawing strength from the loyal dog. I don't know if anyone can be prepared for that, Eleanor admitted. But yes, if going public means Raymond faces justice, if it means other women in situations like mine see that they can fight back and win, then yes, I'm ready. What Eleanor didn't know was that at that very moment, Raymond was planning his own move. And tomorrow, when he showed up at her hospital room, everything would change again, where she couldn't easily escape. The doctors had testified about the severity of Eleanor's condition when she was found. Big Marcus had presented the recordings of Raymond threatening Eleanor in the hospital. And Eleanor herself had taken the stand and told her story with such calm, clear honesty that even Raymond's lawyers couldn't shake her testimony. Now, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury was ready with their verdict. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor, the jury foreman said, standing up. Eleanor felt Sophie grab her hand on one side and Big Marcus squeeze her shoulder on the other. Atlas, wearing his service dog vest, pressed against her legs. On the charge of kidnapping, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. On the charge of attempted murder, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. On the charge of domestic abuse, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Reporters frantically typed on their phones. Supporters of Eleanor cheered. And Raymond, sitting at the defense table, put his head in his hands. Eleanor sat there, stunned, as the word guilty echoed in her mind again and again. She had won. Against all odds, against the powerful Wellington name, against Raymond's expensive lawyers and connections, she had won. The judge banged his gavel for order. Raymond Wellington, you have been found guilty on all charges. Sentencing will be held in 2 weeks. Until then, you will be remanded into custody. Bailiffs, take him away. As the bailiffs led Raymond away in handcuffs, he looked back at Eleanor one last time. But there was no remorse in his eyes, no apology. Just cold, bitter hatred. Eleanor looked right back at him, and she didn't flinch. She wasn't afraid of Raymond anymore. He had no power over her now. Outside the courthouse, Eleanor faced a wall of reporters and cameras. Mrs. Wellington, how does it feel to get justice? What do you want to say to other abuse victims? Are you satisfied with the verdict? Eleanor took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphones. Today, justice was served, Eleanor said, her voice strong and clear. Raymond Wellington was held accountable for his actions. But this verdict isn't just about me. It's about every woman who has been abused, manipulated, or abandoned by someone who was supposed to love them. It's about showing that no matter how powerful your abuser is, truth and justice can still prevail. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. To the women out there who are suffering in silence, I see you. I was you. And I want you to know that you are stronger than you think. You deserve better than what your abuser has told you. And there are people who will believe you, who will support you, who will help you escape. Don't give up. Your life is worth fighting for. The reporters erupted with more questions, but Big Marcus's security team gently escorted Eleanor to a waiting car. As they drove away from the courthouse, Eleanor looked out the window at the crowds of people cheering and holding signs that said, "We believe Eleanor," and "Justice for survivors." You did it, Sophie said, hugging Eleanor tight. You actually did it. We did it, Eleanor corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you, without Big Marcus, without Atlas. At the mention of his name, Atlas barked from the front seat, making everyone laugh. What happens now? Eleanor asked Big Marcus. Now, Big Marcus said with a small smile, you start living again, really living. 2 years later, Eleanor stood in front of a beautiful building, watching as workers installed the final sign above the entrance. The Atlas Foundation, a safe haven for survivors. The foundation had taken 2 years to build, but it was finally ready. 3 floors of safe apartments where women escaping abuse could stay for free while they got back on their feet. A therapy center staffed with counselors who specialized in trauma. Job training programs, legal aid services, childcare facilities. Everything Eleanor wished she had had when she was trapped in her marriage to Raymond. It's perfect, Sophie said, standing beside Eleanor with a clipboard full of final details. Sophie had become the foundation's executive director, and she had poured her heart into making this place everything it needed to be. It's really happening, Eleanor said, still hardly believing it. We're actually going to open next week. And we already have 15 women on the waiting list, Sophie said. Women who need help, who need safety, who need hope. You're giving them that, Ellie. Eleanor felt Atlas press against her leg. He was older now, starting to show some gray around his muzzle, but still loyal, still her constant companion. We're giving them that, Eleanor corrected, looking at her best friend. None of this would exist without you. A car pulled up, and Big Marcus got out, looking proud. The place looks incredible, Big Marcus said, walking over to examine the building. My company handled the security systems, and I have to say, this is the most secure non-military building I've ever seen. Anyone who tries to get in here to hurt these women is going to have a very bad day. Thank you, Eleanor said, hugging Big Marcus. Over the past 2 years, he had become like a father to her. The parent she had lost, the protector she had needed. For everything. For believing in me, for funding the foundation, for being there through all of it. Thank you for giving this old man a purpose beyond making money, Big Marcus said gruffly. Wellington Technologies has pivoted to doing more charity work, more ethical business practices. You inspired that, Eleanor. You reminded me what really matters. What about Raymond? Eleanor asked. She tried not to think about him often, but sometimes she couldn't help wondering. He's serving his sentence, Big Marcus said. 15 years with possibility of parole after 10. He writes me letters sometimes, asking me to use my influence to get him out early. I don't respond. And Veronica? Got 3 years for conspiracy. She's out in a year and a half with good behavior. But her reputation is destroyed. Nobody in Rosewood Heights will have anything to do with her. Eleanor nodded. She felt nothing for them anymore. No hatred, no anger, not even satisfaction at their downfall. She had moved past them, moved past the pain they had caused. They were just people who had made terrible choices and were facing the consequences. She had more important things to focus on now. Eleanor, a voice called out. Eleanor turned to see a young woman approaching, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and a bruised cheek that makeup couldn't quite hide. I'm sorry to bother you, but I read about your foundation online. I was wondering, is there any way I could get in? I need help. I need to get away from my boyfriend before. She didn't finish the sentence, but Eleanor understood. What's your name? Eleanor asked gently. Maria, the young woman whispered. Maria, you're not bothering me. This is exactly why we built this place. Eleanor took Maria's hand and led her toward the building. Come inside. Let me show you your new home. As Eleanor walked Maria through the foundation, explaining the safety measures, the support services, the way they would help her start a new life, she felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. This was her purpose. This was what all that pain had been for. Not just to survive, but to help others survive too. Atlas walked beside them, and Eleanor watched as Maria's nervous expression softened when she saw the dog. Is that Atlas? Maria asked with wonder. The famous dog who saved you? This is Atlas, Eleanor confirmed, smiling as the dog gently nuzzled Maria's hand. He's our chief comfort officer here at the foundation. He has a gift for knowing who needs a friend. Maria knelt down and hugged Atlas, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered to the dog. Thank you for saving Eleanor. Because she's saving me now. Eleanor felt tears sting her own eyes, but they were good tears. Healing tears. She had survived. She had fought. She had won. And now she was making sure other women could do the same. As the sun set over the Atlas Foundation, painting the sky in shades of hope and new beginnings, Eleanor looked at everything she had built and felt, for the first time in her life, truly proud of who she had become. She wasn't Raymond Wellington's abandoned wife anymore. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was Eleanor, survivor, advocate, founder, and friend. And she was finally truly free. Eleanor's journey from a dying, abandoned woman in a dilapidated building to a powerful advocate for abuse survivors shows us that even in our darkest moments, hope can find us. Sometimes it comes in the form of a loyal dog, a protective father figure, or a best friend who never gives up. And sometimes the strength to save ourselves was inside us all along. We just needed the right moment to discover it. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth, and keep watching for more incredible true stories of courage, survival, and justice.